Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Rebel Daily. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host. Do you know what, folks? Today is National Whipped Cream Day. My co-host has no use for whipped cream. She's that darn sweet. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is Sheila Gunn Reid. How you doing there, Sheila?
Oh, I'm doing great. I was a little scared that you were going to make it weird there, but you didn't.
You know what?
So thank you.
I almost went off the reservation, but luckily just before the show, I had a conversation with the vice president. And I put my inner voice in my brain, especially when it came to something like that ingredient. And I kept it PG or even G-rated material. But I got to tell you, Sheila, I love that jacket on you. I think I'm allowed to say that because we still don't have a human resources person, but no. It is fantastic. I got to know, is it real leather? Because it strikes me that Sheila Gunn Reid, the huntress that you are, you wear leather and you avoid pleather.
Well, this is leather. Thank you for noticing. But I do wear pleather because it's also made of one of my other favorite things besides dead animals is that it's made of fossil fuels. Like they say they're vegan leather. It's made of, dead dinosaurs, which is also fine by me.
Oh, there you go. Speaking of leather, I think one of the greatest scams in automotive history, aside from Corinthian leather, which the Cordoba came in. You remember those classic Ricardo?
Rich Corinthian leather.
Because did the Corinthians even have leather? That was always the question, but it sounded good. But Mercedes, they had it was the model, the 190. It was the so-called baby Benz, the entry-level Benz. And you could get cloth seats or you could get MB leather seats. But guess what? MB leather, there was no leather in MB leather. It was another way of them saying vinyl. And right. I found that shocking. I mean, if you use the word leather, it's got to be leather. But they go, no, but we didn't say leather. We said MB leather, which means vinyl. Right. Sheila, would you have ever figured that out as a car shopper?
You see this all the time right now in ladies' fashion. What they mean by that is, did you lose me?
Just for a second. So we heard you say ladies' fashion.
Ladies' fashion, yeah. So you see this all the time. They have PU leather. Now, if you don't know what PU stands for, it's polyurethane, which is not leather at all. But again, I'm not mad about it because I'm happy to see vegans using fossil fuels while they starve themselves for the environment.
You know what? You're quite right. If vegans didn't use real leather, cowhide, and they didn't use fossil fuel synthetics, they would have to go about naked, right? I mean, they are compromising on their principles to stay decent and to stay warm, I would say.
Don't get me started on the vast swaths of the earth that they have to clear to grow kale. While I'm the bad guy just shooting the deer that's wandering around in the backyard who's lived a good life. But anyways, we should get on to what we're talking about today because I know Efron wants to keep it a little bit tight. And I look this way today because I'm hosting for Ezra and I have got to keep a tight timeline or I'm going to throw the studio schedule into utter catastrophe. So this is the Rebel Daily, as David rightly points out. And this is a chance for us to talk about the news of the day, as you can obviously tell, completely unscripted. And it's a great way for you to interact with us. And you can do that a couple of different ways. So we are streaming on YouTube, although YouTube is a censorship platform. We're also on Rumble and Getter. And normally we're on Odyssey. I don't think we're on Odyssey today because I don't think we could get the stream up. But if you want to support the work that we do completely willingly, unlike what Justin Trudeau does with the mainstream media, just picks your pocket to give it to people who hate you. You can leave us a paid chat on Rumble. It's called a Rumble Rant. If they're over $5, we commit to reading them on air, but we also will show them. And it's a great way, as I said, for you to get involved in the show, to interact with your fellow Rebel supporters, by the way. There's always lively things happening in the live chat. And you get to help us keep the lights on and support the people who I think you know that we support you as well, and your right to speak your mind and live your life however you feel like.
Yeah, and, please keep it clean. Aaron O'Toole doesn't like the sight of the letter F. I'm not even going to say what the full word is, or might be. By the way, do you think Aaron O'Toole, Sheila, shops at French Connection UK? They abbreviate that name, of course, to almost resemble the F-bomb, or would that be too offside for the delicate O'Toole?
I bet he buys all of his clothes at Costco. All of them.
Anyways, that's enough time for yesterday's man, I should think. And
Yes.
I see Sheila for openers. Oh my God, the poor people of Brampton. I mean, they're already cursed with sneaky Patrick Brown, aka Canada's most corrupt politician, bar none. And my God, just imagine if there was a cosmic fluke that occurred, Sheila, in the Conservative Party of Canada leadership race, that somehow he didn't get disqualified. Somehow he got enough votes through shenanigans, let's say, and he's the leader. And somehow in the months or years ahead, he becomes the Prime Minister of Canada. I remember as we're talking about this, we know Trudeau is a grifter, but Trudeau is lazy. He wants to smoke his bong. He wants to go surfing. Patrick Brown, he's a workaholic. He'd be working the grift machine on Parliament Hill 24/7. So thank goodness that, to use the, the Glengarry Glen Ross sales contest analogy, if being the head of the Conservative Party was winning the Cadillac Eldorado, he got second prize, Mayor of Brampton. That's a set of steak knives, politically speaking. But I digress, because this has nothing to do with Patrick Brown, although then again, you never know, do you? We have some video evidence of a lineup that I think, Sheila, rivals the lineups we used to see in the former Soviet Union in order to get a loaf of bread, but it's at a so-called Service Canada outlet. Service Canada. How dare they use the word service? Because this is anything but. There you go, folks. Take a look at this. I don't know how clear it is, but it is a line that's, how many meters or maybe even kilometers, Sheila, would you say that line stretches for?
God, it's like they're lining up for Garth Brooks concert tickets or something. Like, this is crazy. Like, what happens at the end of this? It reminds me of, like, at an abattoir, all the cattle are just sort of walking. They don't know where they're going, but they know that they have to be in a single form line. And you get to the end and you get a bolt gun in your head. Like, this is awful. And these are Canadians who likely, this is a passport office, right? Like, this Service Canada is the sort of body that oversees the passport office. These are Canadians who are just trying to do the right thing, renew their passport, and maybe travel a little bit if you can brave the disaster in the airports that the Liberals have created. What a mess.
No, and Sheila, this is a COVID-19 symptom because, as you know, especially in federal bureaucracies, when the pandemic hit, you're gonna work at home. So you're going to be isolated. There'll be, no problems in terms of masking or social distancing. You'll be in your own little home office. Now the pandemic is over. Although kind of funny, though, that there's still travel restrictions to law-abiding Canadians going to the U.S. if you're unvaxxed, whereas on the southern border, come right on in. No problem. We don't care about your medical history. But here's the thing. How long is it going to take to get these, bureaucracies that deal with the people ramped up to the regular level? Because I'm guessing here, Sheila, that office is not fully staffed, i.e. they're not at the 2019 levels. And the question I have for you, my friend, is why? The pandemic's over and done with. Why isn't there enough people on duty that ludicrous lineup? And by the way, the bottom half of that lineup, at least, there's no way they're going to be served. At 5 o'clock, the doors are locked And you can all bugger off now because they're not going to burn the midnight oil to take care of that line. We know that for certain. So, Sheila, why isn't there managers, senior bureaucrats, even politicians for that matter, saying, get back to work? I know there's union resistance, but so what? If your job description prior to 2020 was going to a Service Canada outlet to serve the people, you know that part of service, serve, then why are they still working out of a home office?
David, I stopped listening after you assumed that federal bureaucrats would work after 5 or at least up till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. These people are packing it in at 3:45. I remember Tamara Ugolini went to renew her passport. And I think that by the time you take your ticket for to get served, like people, they were done taking tickets like within the first hour because there were so many people and not enough people actually physically in the building working. I remember Blacklocks did a story on this, and I think it was up to 75%. I think it was, don't quote me on that, but it was like 75% of Service Canada workers were still working remotely. How the heck do you check a passport? How do you take a passport application when you are not even in the building? And then, as Blacklocks reports this morning, federal offices in general are still sitting 70% empty. Perfect. Let's auction off all those chairs or stack them outside the Service Canada office so that these poor people can at least sit down while they're waiting forever. But let's sell these buildings. Let's fire these bureaucrats. We don't need you, obviously. You're at home. We don't physically need you. Probably, you know, somebody working behind a computer could do your job. Let's sell the buildings. This is prime Ottawa real estate. Sell them off, auction off the office equipment, and fire these people. Come to work or get fired. That should be the ultimatum. The problem is the bureaucracy is, it's PSAC, right? It's the union, and they're the Harper Hates Me button union. Remember that? They had that campaign back in 2015, I think 2015, 2014. They are the ones that had the Harper Hates Me button. Even though they're not supposed to be explicitly campaigning for anybody, that's what they did. So these guys are, you know, liberal and maybe even NDP activists. So, I mean, why would they want to go back to work? The Liberals are giving them everything they need, not firing them, and they don't have to work. It's good work if you can get it.
You know, you're so right, Sheila. And how about Unifor? You know, as we discovered a month and a half ago when we went to visit them to get comment on their president of the Windsor 444 local Unifor union shop. He's the guy that was trying to organize 1,000 auto workers to go down to the Freedom Convoy protesters, beat them up, and then throw them into the Detroit River. And I can tell you this, the Detroit River, Sheila, in February, that's not Tahiti treat by any standard. So we were trying to find out if they were going to censure this person. I mean, you know, people talk about the violence associated with the Freedom Convoy. Yeah, it's coming from Unifor. That's where it's coming from. But the point is, we found out by going to Unifor's brand new shiny office tower, and those in the GTA, if you're driving on the 404 north of Finch, you look east and you'll see this brand new shiny Unifor tower. It is empty except for a receptionist who's on duty to tell people it's empty because everybody's working at home. And they just opened that thing, Sheila. What if I was a Unifor member? I would be screaming mad about how my union dues have been used to be, squandered upon this ivory tower that nobody sits in. It's outrageous. But I will tell you the most outrageous example of all, and it is the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission. Sheila, they have a downtown Toronto prize office. Once upon a time, i.e. before COVID, you could walk in. I think they opened the doors at 9 a.m. and they were open till 7 p.m. And now, guess what? No walk-ins, and the hours are reduced to 4:30, and you have to make an appointment. And sometimes the appointments to claim your winnings, it's weeks in advance. And it is all being done on the proviso of health and safety. So in other words, it's too dangerous, even though we're into 2023, to deal with somebody who might be unmasked or unvaccinated. But here's the hypocrisy of this, Sheila. If you want to buy lottery tickets, 24/7. No appointments necessary. Go to your local convenience store. Shop till you drop. How do they mandate this with a straight face? That's what I want to know, Sheila.
It's funny that you bring up the buildings of these union places. And I was just Googling, and I was listening to you, but I was I couldn't remember if it was the Alberta Federation of Labor or the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees. I can't remember whose building it is, but it's on the west end of Edmonton, and Edmontonians, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like sort of tucked away in behind West Edmonton Mall. And it is this enormous building that if you drive past, you're like, is this a monument to a Soviet tank? And, it's this big, odorous, sort of stale building, and it looks like a Soviet tank, or maybe the tank that drove over Tank Man in Tiananmen Square. That's whenever I look at it, that's what it reminds me of. And it's just, I always think, okay, well, this is just crushing the working man. I see it every time I drive by, and it just reminds me of that. And just built off the backs of forced union dues.
Incredible. And I think this is not a political issue. I think whether you're on the left or the right, to see this kind of waste being carried out, like I said, if I was a Unifor rank and file member, I'm really pissed, Sheila, that a portion of my union dues is going to this ivory tower where nobody is working except a receptionist. Like I said, to tell you, there's nobody here. They're all home.
Yes. If you work for Unifor and a portion of your salary went to Jerry Diaz's salary.
Where is Jerry, by the way? Is he still in some mental health facility? As you know, he suffered a breakdown just when it was discovered he allegedly had his hand caught in the Unifor cookie jar. But you don't see that guy in the media that often, do you, Sheila? But then again, I almost forgot, most of the mainstream media unionized people belong to which union? Unifor. We should get to this last story before we go to our first ad break. And it is on, this is actually my monologue as I'm filling in for Ezra Levant today, because it is the NDP, federal NDP, pushing for more internet censorship. So they are committing here to, first of all, they're complaining, by the way, that the Liberals' censorship isn't going far enough, but simultaneously agreeing to support it, which is interesting, because that's the Liberals, or that's the NDP for you. They complain about the Liberals, but then they do everything the Liberals need them to do to stay in power. And they're talking about Bill C-36. It's an act to amend the criminal code to propose $70,000 in fines for internet users. This is not internet companies. This is people who post on the internet for legal content deemed, this is the most chilling part, likely, not even that it did, but likely to foment detestation or vilification. So if you post content that might encourage somebody to dislike somebody else, let's say I post a picture of an F Trudeau sign and somebody gives it a thumbs up. Have I just encouraged somebody to dislike Justin Trudeau? That feeling now under Bill C-36 could be made illegal, and I could receive a $70,000 fine for encouraging people to dislike Justin Trudeau. That's where this comes down on. And the NDP are like, doesn't go far enough. Well, first of all, it doesn't surprise me in the least that the NDP, the censorious thug fans that they are, say that it doesn't go far enough. But here's the big problem with that piece of legislation. There'll be people out there saying, well, on the internet, you'll see examples of libel and slander and defamation. And I go, yes, you will. And you know what? we have had laws on the books, 'twas ever thus, for libel, slander, and defamation. If you think you have a concrete case that you've been defamed or libeled, then you go and take that person to court. Why does there have to be this like shortcut system that we're going to fine you for alleged hate speech, defamation, libel, however you want to call it? And here's the other thing, Sheila. This is the most important thing of all with this kind of flawed legislation. There's a Latin saying, I can't remember it because I flunked Latin, but it's this. It translates into English as thus: who watches the watchers? Who are the people making these mandates, and who do they answer to? It seems like nobody. And that makes this legislation frightening.
Right. So this is Bill C-36 that we're talking about. It has not been reintroduced, although there's two separate pieces of censorship legislation tabled and currently winding their way through committee. And the NDP would like to see C-36, or at least elements of C-36, end up in those new pieces of legislation where internet users could end up being fined $70,000. But the real focus, as they say, is on misinformation. And, you know, people who handle cash all the time, the reason they can find a counterfeit just like that is their familiarity with the real. So the fraudulent becomes pretty evident to them because they handle the real stuff all the time. Well, Justin Trudeau and his relationship with misinformation, it's that, but in reverse. Because at first I thought, like, who is the government to tell me what the heck is misinformation? Yeah. But they have a real familiarity with misinformation, don't they? I mean, they're the ones who are telling us, get a vaccine, it stops COVID. Well, how many times has Justin Trudeau, Mr. Triple or quadruple boosted? Yeah. Caught COVID? 3, I think, maybe. And who knows? I mean, some of those are probably like, oh, the truckers are coming, I have COVID now. But, or, you know, when he says, we're not going to take your hunting rifles, then he admits we're going to take your hunting rifles. Yep. And then 3 weeks later, he says, wait a minute, no, actually, we're not going to take your hunting rifles. You shouldn't be hunting with those things anyways. So the Liberals are the purveyors. They're the peddlers of misinformation. And they're the ones telling us that we can't be critics of them, or that's misinformation. Misinformation doesn't mean anything anymore except stuff the government doesn't want you to say at this point.
And can you imagine, Sheila, this government, this federal government, the Justin Trudeau Liberals, those people being the moral authority on misinformation and disinformation with all the scandals in the last 7+ years, Sheila. And you know, here's the thing. I really believe if we had a functional mainstream media, i.e. a media that was independent and not dependent on government dollars, this government would have fallen years ago, given all the baggage in their closet. I'm talking everything from SNC Lavalin, the Wee scandal, blackface, groping. It just goes on and nothing sticks. And these people are the moral authorities about misinformation and disinformation on the internet. Give me a break.
Right. And they're so often they're the ones peddling it. Remember Rachel Gilmore? Don't have your unvaccinated relatives over for Christmas because you'll all get COVID. And then just like everybody's getting it. Nobody, and in fact, the vaccinated are getting it at greater rates than the unvaccinated. Like, it's just so stupid. Just because they publish it, all of a sudden means that it's true, even though it's absolutely untrue. But they think that the fact that they hit publish on their computer, they clicked the mouse, that makes anything they say completely true because they're the arbiters of truth.
Is Rachel Gilmore identifying as a doctor these days, Sheila? Is that the end? And when she put out that tweet,
I'd be happy if she just identified as a journalist at this point.
And when she put out that tweet, was she wearing or not wearing her blouse? I don't understand what the narrative is there. Maybe she's trying to get a an interview with Justin Trudeau, one-on-one. Maybe she wants to experience the Rose Night effect. I don't know, but it's funny how that blouse keeps falling off.
She's showing off her Band-Aid from her vaccination.
Is that what you call it?
Yeah, maybe that's why Rosie Barton is a little mad these days. There's a little bit of cat fight happening over there. By the way, did you see that lady? I forget what she works for, Czech News or some unwatchable show on Vancouver Island. She was complaining that somebody sent her a very mild email, by the way, about the dress that she was wearing. I think she does the weather, by the way. So whatever. I guess that's journalism. Maybe not. Maybe I don't even care enough to find out what she actually does over at Czech. But she complained on the internet because somebody sent her a very mild email saying, like, maybe cover up your arms. I cover up my arms on TV. First of all, it's cold in here, but I think my tattoos make people nervous. So I cover up my arms. But she took a screenshot of this and she got on the internet and she's onto Twitter and she's like, this is the kind of thing that women in media face these days. And like a very mild criticism about this is her. Who is she? Tess Van Straten. This is what women in broadcasting sadly still face in 2023. Do you think my dress is almost upsetting? I get like email death threats, but I don't report them to the internet. I report them to the police. I would be like, this would be a very mild day in Sheila's email inbox if someone was complaining that I wore sleeveless tops during the winter time, which is what this email was about. And I was thinking, like, this is me using my binoculars, looking for all the times that you spoke up when Rebel News women journalists were shoved, manhandled, robbed, punched, pepper sprayed, beaten with batons. And this lady is on the internet boo-hooing because somebody was mean about her dress. And it wasn't even mean. It was just like, listen, lady, you're of a certain age, maybe just like put a coat on. But like, this is how delicate these people are. Any criticism and they go crying for support on the internet, while female journalists, particularly conservative ones, are in real physical danger out there on the streets, having things happen to them. And she's crying about someone said they didn't like my green dress. I can't even believe we consider what we do and they do the same job.
Oh, 100%, Sheila. And, you know, the angle I take, I go back a decade ago when Ezra and I were part of the Sun News Network, and we had many attractive female anchors, and they wore outfits like that with, you know, the arms bared.
Sure.
And the shaming that went on by the left, right, to attack Sun News Network's credibility on what these ladies were wearing. And that was okay if it's a right-of-center media network, but apparently for this weather lady, is she even a meteorologist? Because I think you should at least be that if you're going to talk about the weather. But she has probably been hired for her looks. And so somebody didn't like her bare arms. If I were her, I'd just shrug it off. You can't please everybody all the time. But now, I would imagine those same people 10 years ago that were
let's read this comment. Sorry. This is what she said was so upsetting to her. Let's read that comment. I forgot how mild it was. I find it inappropriate for Tess Van Straten to still wear sleeveless tops in the wintertime to report on the weather. In my opinion, she should be wearing a suit jacket and look more professional like other newscasters around the world. The lady then goes on to do the most Canadian thing ever. Sorry for a negative comment, but it's almost upsetting to see what she is wearing. That's what she felt was some sort of hate crime against her.
Holy Aaron O'Toole, that is so mild. I can't even believe that's the one that triggered her. That?
Yeah. We had a journalist robbed by Antifa before Christmas. But yeah, I hope that her feelings recover because people thought that you should wear a suit jacket in the wintertime.
And before the previous Christmas, if I need to remind our audience, we had a journalist, I'm speaking about myself here, basically beaten up by Justin Trudeau's Royal Canadian Mounted Henchmen. No outcry about that, Sheila. Oh, no. But that, somebody that's even more mild than I could ever dream of. And she is trying to, actually, I think that's what's going on here, Sheila. She has plucked something from social media to give herself a platform to play the victim card, get more views, get more likes, and make a name for herself. And look at us, Sheila. She's tricked you and I.
About her.
Here we are talking about somebody we never heard of, right? Besides, who watches the weather on TV? You want the weather? Pick up your phone. There's your weather.
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. This has rendered old lady sleeveless arms a little bit obsolete, hasn't it? I know that it's minus 16 outside right now.
I can't believe that's even a thing. But, by the way, Sheila, I see we're way overdue for our first
Let's
ad break.
hit that ad break. Yeah.
Yes. So Olivia and Efren are probably sweating it. So why don't we zip it for a little while and go to our first ad break. Thank you.
Oh, hey guys, sorry to interrupt. I bet this interruption from me is kind of annoying. I mean, frankly, I don't want to be here either. I loved the show you're watching, and I'd be slightly bothered having some journalist pop in to disrupt my viewing. So if you don't want this to ever happen to you again and just have me or somebody else show up in the middle of your show, please consider becoming a subscriber to Rebel News Plus, where you will get early and ad-free access to incredible premium Rebel News content just like this. It's easy and cheaper than Netflix. Just go to rebelnewsplus.com to join today.
It's the values. You look at Western values in Western society, and these are values we could all relate to, but they're old world values of grit and community and perseverance.
It's a place where you can make a living with your back and your hands and a little bit of hard work. And it's a place of opportunity. And I think as Albertans, we're fiercely protective of that.
The world's energy crisis has been grabbing newspaper headlines. In a nutshell, we're running short of petroleum resources and the prices are zooming upwards.
My colleagues in the government and I have come reluctantly to believe that the price of oil in Canada must go up.
This was Alberta.
Origin of the Alberta separatist movement begins with the election of Pierre Trudeau as Prime Minister.
It was a deliberate and malicious targeting of the West, which suited Pierre Trudeau just fine, just like it suits Justin Trudeau just fine.
Sunny ways, my friends.
Blackface.
There is an actual hostile government towards Alberta.
Why did your dad give everyone in Western Canada the middle finger?
Really, in politics, you do have to make big decisions, and whenever you make big decisions, there's going to be people who agree with it and people who don't disagree with it.
Plenty of people want to leave this country.
It's not the kind of idea you'd expect to hear from someone who wants to win power and hold power. It is a radical idea.
And you would normalize the discussion. And so maybe Alberta wouldn't have to go, because maybe the rest of the country and the rest of the world would say, whoa, don't go. Will you accept these changes instead? That's what happened for Quebec.
There's no maple leafs west of the Manitoba border. Why do we have a maple leaf by unilateral decision on Canadian flags?
Think of how the American colonists were in 1775. That's how a lot of Albertans are today.
Well, Sheila, when it comes to Rebel News Plus, I appeal to the millions of Canadians out there who listened to Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and canceled their Disney Plus subscription to take that money and put it to Rebel News Plus. Well, I exaggerate
50%
millions.
on that, by the way.
What's that?
Because you save 50% on that because we're $8.
Yeah.
I don't know what Disney is. I just pay it. It just disappears out of my bank account. But we're only $8 a month to support us, and you get a daily show from Ezra.
Unbelievable.
And me not interrupting your shows.
By the way, Sheila, if you had to guess, say it was a contest that somebody knows the exact number, And if you can get close to it, you win, I don't know, $10,000. How many Canadians listened to Miss Freeland 2 months ago and actually said, you know what, by golly, the minister's right. I'm going to save some dough by canceling Disney Plus. How many actual Canadians picked up the phone, got to their service provider and said, yeah, get rid of it. I'm following my finance minister's patriotic advice here.
I'm going to say it was so inconsequential that we didn't even have a statement from Disney on it. Right? Like when the finance minister of an entire country tells the populace, 39 million people, you know what, cancel your Disney Plus subscription. So few people actually considered doing it or did it that Disney was like, nothing happened. Like it was so inconsequential that they didn't even say like, hey, no, stay with us. Don't listen to your government. Enjoy some socially distanced entertainment or whatever. They didn't come out and make a statement. So that should tell you about how impactful Chrystia Freeland's financial advice was.
My second question, Sheila, do you think Miss Freeland herself canceled her Disney Plus subscription?
No. I bet her kids would pack up like wolves and eat her alive if she tried that.
Because, being a liberal, it's kind of like, take public transit, ride your bicycle, walk to the supermarket and haul 12 bags of groceries back home. Meanwhile, I'm buggering off on my private jet to Europe for some climate change seminar.
Let us never forget that I went through painstaking months of comparing Chrystia Freeland's travel expenses and caught her sending her limo ahead of her private plane to pick her up when she went to places like Montreal from Ottawa. So I'm sorry. I don't believe this lady canceled her Disney Plus. I don't think she canceled her Netflix. I don't think she does any of the things she tells us to do.
And Sheila, thank you for bringing that up. I had forgot. You see, there's so many scandals, you forget them. And I drive it back to when I look at what was one of the biggest scandals in the Harper government, Bev Oda ordering a $16 glass of orange juice. Think of how much that cost, what you just laid out there, having the limo fly ahead of the plane to pick her up. And compare that to a $16 glass of orange juice. Where was the media outcry? They don't do that. These dogs don't hunt, as they say in Alabama.
Well, and the problem is that liberals will defend any of the bad behavior of their leaders.
Yeah.
Conservatives don't do that, which is how it makes us, as a movement, it makes it very difficult for us to win elections. Because when conservative leaders get not conservative enough, we show them the door. Erin O'Toole, Andrew Scheer, Jason Kenney, because when they lie and become hypocrites, they get purged from the conservative movement because the conservative movement has values like that. And the liberal movement, unfortunately, doesn't. Their only value is power, attaining power, and then hanging on to power at all costs.
100%. By the way, Sheila, since you are a hunter, is it Alabama where they say this dog don't hunt? Or there's a lot of states that begin with the letter A, Alaska, Arkansas. Did I get the right state?
You know what? I will tell you, my dog does absolutely nothing. So I think it's dogs everywhere. I have the world's laziest dog. She's under the desk, just sitting there. It's what she does all day.
Well, then I'll just have to say, as they say in Alberta, this dog don't hunt.
Well, speaking of Alberta, let's move ahead to Premier Danielle Smith. Because we did show that clip from Ungovernable, that's Key and Simone's documentary. It's available at albertadocumentary.com or on the Rebel News YouTube page. But Danielle, some of the things that are laid out in the Alberta documentary that fomented, to use the language of Bill C-36, foment such detestation from Albertans towards the federal government is the treatment of our natural resources. Yes. Because we have provincial control over our natural resources. But because we are a confederation, we need buy-in from the feds to build infrastructure, even though they'll happily reap the rewards. Am I frozen in the worst condition? Okay, there I'm unfrozen. But so we need buy-in from the feds to move our product.
Yeah.
and they're happy to take the financial benefits of us producing our product, but they don't want to help us move it. And so Danielle Smith says, no, we're in charge now. New sheriff in town. We're going to decide what we do with our resources.
But Sheila, what does that mean? What can Alberta do? I mean, you mentioned 2 days ago that the energy sector right now is showing vigorous signs of life in Alberta. But given those governors by the federal government on getting the product to market, or markets as the case may be, what can Alberta do unilaterally to ensure that goes ahead?
Well, they've done some things that, like they're redoing things that Rachel Notley canceled and that previous premiers had done. So they are meeting with the Western governors. So the governors that we need buy-in to run a pipeline through their states. It makes it real hard for the Biden administration to cancel a pipeline when we have buy-in from the states all along the way, where we just say, like, look, we just need you to stamp this to go across the border because we've got buy-in from every state along the route and every indigenous group along the route to get ourselves to the Gulf of Mexico or to refineries in Oklahoma. That's one thing that the Alberta government is really good at, is getting buy-in from indigenous groups by giving them stakes in projects and working with the oil companies, the pipeline companies to get buy-in from indigenous groups along the way. I'm not sure Keystone XL did that quite right in certain areas.
Yeah, because that was the first thing Biden killed when taking office, wasn't it?
Yeah. So, there were doing your best to work with, the Western governors, but there's things like, you're making us go off coal. The federal government is making us go off coal. We're the Saudi Arabia of coal. 800 years of coal under our feet. It just comes out of the ground. It falls out of the riverbank. And we're not supposed to burn it. We're not supposed to export it. We're not supposed to use it for electricity. There's a lot of things that she's rethinking, including this bizarre pursuit of hydrogen, which I don't know. It seems like a sort of a hobby horse. I'm not sure. I don't know why we would pursue hydrogen when we're walking on coal and oil,
Oh, and when you mention coal being used to generate electricity, that might, call me a crank here, but more electricity might come in handy as we increasingly electrify vehicles, right? Because has anyone ever figured out, when you plug it in, and there's millions and millions of more cars in the years ahead coming online, where that energy is going to come from? And by the way, I really think California is in for a disaster in that regard. They've got one nuclear facility left, Sheila. I believe there's 2 plants. One goes offline, I think it's this year, and the other is slated for next year. And yet they've got that 2030 legislation that no fossil fuel vehicles can be sold in that state. I believe the number of vehicles in California, 14.2 million. So when you eventually replace those all in a state already having roving brownouts and blackouts and has no plans to build new nuclear facilities, which I don't understand. I mean, I know the Green movement is divided on that issue. Where is all that juice going to come from?
Well, and besides electric cars, let's throw in a heat wave into the midst of this quest for electric vehicles. And all of a sudden, people are dying because they can't run their air conditioner because of a heat wave. In Alberta, we experienced some pretty tight usage of our electricity just a couple of weeks ago. Not even. It warmed up to minus 16 and I feel like it's out of the cold snap. But it was like minus 46, 47 when I woke up in the morning sometimes. And our electricity grid couldn't keep up with that. And so now you want all the cars in Canada to be electrified, I guess is the right word, or hybrids. I'm not sure, net zero cars anyway. Yeah. By 2035, it's impossible. First of all, you want me to believe that your little electric car is going to, manage even just traveling on the road that I have to take to get to the main highway, when if you don't know the road, you only drive by memory because it drifts so bad. You think this a little electric abomination is going to get up to the highway? Probably not. But will it even start when it's minus 47? Definitely no.
And then there is the price, of course. I think when I researched the Ford F-150 Lightning, that's their all-electric pickup truck. These are U.S. prices. I believe the base price was $69,000 US. The dealer markup, Sheila, was, I believe, $73,000 because they're in such little supply. So in other words, you can buy one electric F-150 or two nicely equipped fossil fuel F-150s. I think I know where I would weigh in on that. But, you know, here's the hypocrisy. Going back to California, which has that hard deadline of 2030, what do you want to bet that the elites, be they political or be they from the entertainment industry, they're not going to suffer losing air conditioning, like you mentioned, Sheila. They're not going to suffer their Tesla not getting fully charged. You know why? They're going to be buying state-of-the-art big diesel generators because they're not going to go without. No. Leonardo DiCaprio, you think that guy's going to sweat it and use public transit? No, sir. That they'll be nicely taken care of by the old fossil fuel formula. What a bunch of hypocrites. And especially in Leonardo DiCaprio. Remember when he was filming The Reverend in Alberta? You know this story, don't you? Yeah, and he thought he saw physical evidence of climate change before his eyes. And what was he actually watching, Sheila?
A Chinook. Yeah, a bear porn gore movie. Yeah, he was like, oh my God, this is climate change in action. We're like, no, that's a Chinook. It's warm, moist wind comes down across the mountains and it'll raise the temperature like 40 degrees sometimes.
But Sheila, God bless the crew of locals.
I know. They were just like,
they didn't inform them that. They were going, oh my God, I've never seen such a thing. What's happening, right? And of course, DiCaprio going hysterical and getting on Twitter. And but like I said, all bark and no bite. He'll be nicely taken care of via fossil fuels, even when everyone else has to suffer from this crazy electrical agenda.
Sure. Let's hit the next ad break and then we'll jump ahead to the COVID nonsense.
Do we have to go off YouTube, that is, or?
No. We'll just play it safe. It's just about fines and some scientific studies.
Then YouTube will like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's hit an ad break and we'll go to that.
We're here for all Albertans, Canadians. We're here fighting for the freedoms of not us, but our kids, our grandkids, the future of this province, this country. We are prepared to put everything on the line.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views.
I've also received reports in the last hour of people allied with the protesters assaulting RCMP officers.
No, that was an assault between the two civilians, between a protester and a civilian.
So Jason Kenney's statement was not true at the press release.
I can tell you what I just told you, sir.
They have just blocked the border here in Coots, Alberta to Sweetgrass, Montana.
We don't want to put anybody's livelihood in jeopardy. That is the very last resort. But
this is something I've certainly never seen before. Freedom and peace and loving. That's the Canadian way. It's not like CBC or any of these other mainstream news channels are making it out to be.
I am not a white supremacist.
We're not backing down until the mandates are lifted. We're not backing down until the mandates are lifted. We have. This is our only battle we have.
Boy, it still makes me cringe when I see Blackface McGroper calling freedom fighters the fringe minority. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the people who wanted to use tanks on peaceful protesters, they think they are the mainstream. Like, what kind of upside down bizarro world do these people live in? Speaking of upside down bizarro world, imagine getting a fine for having Christmas dinner. But that's what happened under Justin Trudeau in 2022. You know, we thought 2021 was the year of the fines, but 2022 is really no different. Canadians received 14.8 million in COVID fines during the first 8 months of 2022. The good news is under 1 million of that has been collected, and the majority of these were COVID quarantine tickets. None of which, by the way, I'm proud to say, none of which were ever levied by the province of Alberta. So if you were flying back to Canada and you said, F your quarantine and went home, you were fine. We didn't ticket you for that. Data from British Columbia, Ontario, Manitoba, and Atlantic Canada revealed that residents received 3,600 tickets between January and August under the Federal Quarantine Act. And of course, naturally, the science was different in Manitoba than it was in Alberta, clearly.
Wow. You know, and we should keep track, Sheila, of how many of these cases go down to defeat, or how many are simply thrown out, or even how many are thrown out simply because so much time has taken place that they sometimes do that, right? But $14.8 million, as if a fine of almost $50 million to hardworking, otherwise law-abiding Canadians, as if that affects the transmission of the coronavirus.
Yeah,
kind of
and
like
while simultaneously the migrant hotels at Roxham Road are filling up, nobody's vaccinated there, and they can just go free into Canada.
And we're always supposed to follow the science. Well, sometimes we follow the science, sometimes we follow the money, and these aren't adding up right now, are they, Sheila?
No, and that's a good segue into the next topic, because people from the very beginning, skeptics were the ones following the science, by the way. Because a study of, I think, this is my story, so I should be more clear on the numbers, but I think it was roughly 200,000 diagnosed COVID cases. They studied them and they divided them into 3 categories. Basically, never active, somewhat active, and always active people, physically active people. And if you were even slightly physically active, your chances of a poor outcome, of hospitalization, a deterioration event is what they called it, or death, was almost insubstantial. Like it was just like a rounding error if you remained physically active. And I thought, yeah, we've said that, like, why would COVID have been any different than any other disease on the face of the earth? If you are physically active, and even better, a physically fit person, you don't die of comorbidities because you don't have the same comorbidities. But the advice from our public health necromancers: close the gyms, close kids' sports, no gym classes at school, devastate the lives of gym owners, stay home, don't go outside, Netflix and chill, Uber Eats yourself into an early grave. As I say in that video, these maniacs, after closing the gyms, they closed the national park next door to me. They chained the gates on the front and the back, even though there's a road that goes right through the middle that connects a community to the main highway. They closed it to stop the spread of COVID. So if you were walking in nature with the buffalo, it's Elk Island National Park, you're walking with the buffalo, that was a COVID danger. But as it turns out, if you had followed the advice of the public health necromancers, your chances of dying were greater than if you didn't.
But Sheila, I'm very confused here on this exercise angle, because I tried to stay fit during COVID. I mean, my exercise regimen is the reason why I'm merely fat as opposed to circus fat. But I've been told by Time magazine that physical fitness and exercising, isn't this a display of white supremacy somehow? So what does one do?
Yeah, and that's the thing. They want to normalize obesity, right? Like,
oh yeah,
they really do, and they like fit at every size. That's not a thing. That's not true. That is unkind to tell people that.
Yep.
You don't have to look like a fitness model. In fact, if you look like a fitness model, I worry that your body fat is probably a little too low as a woman. But people, especially with COVID, it became very clear that if you had these comorbidities of diabetes, which is lifestyle related by and large, unless it's type 1, and the comorbidities associated with diabetes, like renal failure and all those things. And then there's heart disease, obesity. If you took age out of the age as the factor, if you took that out, it was all obesity and sedentary lifestyle related issues that were causing people to have poor COVID outcomes. And yet they closed the gyms. Yet they told you to stay home and do nothing.
Yeah, and when you're at home, you're watching shows like, My 600-Pound Life, The 1,000-Pound Sisters, Supersized. I mean, there's almost like, and I'm not sure, sometimes I'll tune into this. It's I don't know, it's like looking at a traffic accident. But in another sense, I'm thinking, is this kind of lifestyle being normalized? I always say to myself, if you brought somebody back from 100 years ago, so 1923, and you brought them to 2023, what would they find more fascinating, the smartphone or the fact that there are 600-pound people getting their own television show based on their morbid obesity? And I'm not making fun of these people, because you can ask any doctor, they are headed to an early grave. And yet there's this faction, don't fat shame, don't fat shame. I think when you get to that level, I think fat shaming is actually throwing them a lifeline. If you can get them on a diet, get them into an exercise regimen, despite what Time magazine is saying about exercise being equal to white supremacy, I think that's maybe the kindest thing you can do, as opposed to putting them in front of a camera and filming them eating enough food to feed a small village.
We have a real problem in modern society of conflating the word compassion with enabling, or compassion with the death, by the way. This is part of the same sort of rewriting of the definition of that word that we are using when we apply medical assistance in dying to the mentally ill. They say it's compassionate, or that it's kindness. It's not kindness to coax people into an early grave by not being honest with them. And I think everybody would be much, I don't know. I wish people could be just happy and living to their highest human potential. And we're not doing that when we're doing these things. I know we've got some chats that we got to get to.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, because we are right at, I guess, 2:00 Eastern. So we've got one from Shauna Marie, GA83. She's a regular watcher of the show. She gives us $10 and said, wanted to say hello to you both, Sheila and David, and all the Rebel family. I'm so happy you're back with the daily live stream. Thank you for being you and keeping the truth alive. Well, thanks so much, Shauna.
Well,
that's
thank you,
very kind
Shauna
of
Marie. But, it was worthwhile that we took a break. That Emergencies Act inquiry, we had to keep our eye on that ball, didn't we, Sheila?
Yes. Yeah. And it was really taxing on our production crew and Efron and Olivia behind the camera, because they would work an entire work day and then have to stream late in the evening. And likewise with the talent, we call us, in front of the camera, watching the Emergency Commission, covering the Emergency Commission, doing journalism during the Emergency Commission, tweeting the Emergency Commission, and then live streaming for a couple hours every night. It was very exhausting. And we wanted to make sure that we gave some thought to how we would restructure and rethink the live stream going forward, although it feels a little bit like the same old live stream, which I'm not mad about, by the way. And next one is Shauna Marie G83 still. Thank you, Shauna. $5. She was called ugly, fat, and stupid. No, that's not true because I'm told that you can be beautiful at any size. Anyways, for saying that Rachel Gilmore is unprofessional and she looks like she was ready for the club with her black cat eye makeup, tank top, and that condescending tilt of the head.
We should do a poll. Which Rachel do you dislike the most, Rachel Gilmore or Rachel Notley? What do you think, Sheila?
They've airbrushed Rachel Notley so much these days that you might confuse her for Rachel Gilmore. Anyway, here's the thing. Dress however you want, look however you want. And if people are critics of how you look and what you choose to wear, like, who cares? Yeah. If you're a fully functioning woman doing the news, who cares? Like, who cares?
Sheila,
I might listen to my husband if he was like, Sheila, you look like a slob. Okay, fine. I might take that criticism to heart. But some rando on the internet saying he doesn't like how I look, don't care. Not even a little bit.
But Sheila, you've confused me. What's a woman?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Welcome again to Bizarro Superman world. By the way, when they killed off Sheila, when they killed off Bizarro Superman, do you know what he said?
No.
His last word.
Why would I know? Why would I know? I'm an adult woman.
I'm not going to say. If anyone out there knows and wants to make a $5 super chat, what was Bizarro Superman's last word before he died? It should be obvious to you, Sheila, but carry on.
It's Bizarro, so maybe he said bad bye instead of goodbye. I don't know.
You're so close in an Elaine Bennis kind of way.
He said hello?
Yes, that's it.
Did he? Did I get it? Oh my God, you sucked me into your nerd vacuum.
Don't you remember your comics from your from yesterdecade, Sheila?
No, I only have She-Devil with a sword that you gave me in here. Okay, I think we're all cut up. We can sign off.
Okay then. Well, that's great. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in to the Rebel Daily feed. We really appreciate it, and we especially appreciate any of you that can make a financial donation. That's how we keep the electrical bills paid here. We don't delve into Justin Trudeau's slush fund like the mainstream media people. And thank you, of course, to Efren and Olivia behind the scenes, my lovely co-host, Sheila Gunn Reid. We'll see you again. Are we actually on tomorrow, Sheila, or... I believe we might be, are we?
I just show up when Efron tells me to.
Okay.
I just stay at the desk and turn the camera on when he says, Sheila, we're on Skype. I'm like, okay, I'm there.
Well, two of us, we don't know whom, will be here tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. In the meantime, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
The internet's latest sensation is a multifaceted AI called ChatGPT, which stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. ChatGPT is an AI program created by a company named OpenAI, which is an artificial intelligence research laboratory that specializes in the research and development of the allegedly, and I quote, friendly AI with the goal of using this information for the benefit of humanity. This isn't the first time OpenAI has successfully developed a program that would take over the internet in a storm. Another AI success is DALL-E. Similar to the other popular AI-run image-generating app called Lensa, which you may have seen recently in a trend that has taken over the internet with gorgeous but sometimes creepy AI-generated art, the Lensa app takes normal pictures supplied by you, of you or anyone of your choosing, and turns them into AI-generated works of art. And this is done by using Prisma's AI, which has learned its various forms of painting and art techniques from real-life artists. Some of these artists have even claimed this to be a form of theft, since it does take a human many years of mastery to produce what this AI does in seconds.